Warning, the following 8-bit Independence month-ending flick is for mature as well as immature audiences as well. Viewer discretions have been advised. Darn it! The following footage takes place approximately 2 hours before this week's Indy Radio Arcade. Crap! Excuse us for 1 second. The light switch is over there in the corner. Well, if you know where it is, could you help me find it? Jeez. Oh, there we go. Jeez. The power went out, lights went out, Carl and the Mike show's missing, and it looks like I'm going to have to be the one to start the show for this week. So, hold on, let me see if I can figure out these controls. See, this is why in the world I told them to keep the instructions, because I know they weren't going to be here all year. You know, all the time, or whatever the world would be. Hold on, let's see here. Play, pause, rewind, fast forward, loop. Where's the... They didn't even leave instructions on what song to start the show off with. You gotta be kidding me. Oh, I haven't used that in years, or months, or weeks. You know, I'll just use that one. It's the best I gotta do for now, so... Whew, you know, I always wanted to say this to open up one of the shows, even though it is my show, but... I've got the power! Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, live from Morristown, New Jersey, it is the level 185 edition of the Indy Radio Arcade. And now here's your host, a man who has the power to run this show, but not power to run this show inside of his studios, DJ Smokey. Hey, it's not my fault that birds knocked out the power. Give me a break. But besides all that, folks, welcome to the Indy Radio Arcade Level 185 edition. I am your game show host from the East Coast, DJ Smokey, and we've got plenty of that 8-bit goodness to power your neighborhood if your power went out too. Because we kick things off with a very special Indie Anthology Horror Edition of the 3MR, and apparently according to Carl and the Maestro, who's now back, it stars a man named Dave, who might be a gravedigger. Nice! Next up on the plate, we go into a very special indie wrestling sequel, renamed and reclaimed edition of the Instant Classic video game review, and this one features M. Dickey. Nuff said. Nuff said. Also, besides that, we put your high scores on high display along with some cool indie games along the way for another edition of the Indie Wall of Fame. Then finally, last but not least, we wrap up this show with yet another edition of the $64,000 question. And as a heads up, it will not involve lights going out, but it will involve a certain championship held by a disco man. Yeah, so get your wrestling boots ready, folks. And I guess with Carl and the Maestro rolling the machines with flashlights, I think it's time for me to tell everybody at home they got their pennies, quarters, nickels, dimes, Albanian money, and whatever sort of coins you believe that can help you in an arcade that may have power or not, but has power over games and other cool things, to get ready to play a very special 8-bit month-ending Independence Month edition of... the Indy Radio Arcade. It's time to play the game, kids. All right, all you moviegoers out there, Welcome back to the Indy Radio Arcade. And now it's time for us to go into another very special Indie Tin Wheel Film edition of the 3MR. And the movie we have up on the plate for this week, folks, is the 2020/2021 horror anthology film of Gravedigger Dave's Anthology, or better known as Gravedigger Dave's Halfway House. That's why we went with both years, because they went by two separate titles. But title naming aside, folks, the meat and potatoes for this said story involves Gravedigger Dave going up against a man who was left in purgatory, or the halfway house, telling tales in a competition to tell who can tell the best tale for this moment in time, wherever that moment in time may be, according to Carl and the Maestro. And what did I like about this said anthology tale, folks? Well, outside of the fact that the main portion of this said tale featured 9 stories in total for this, but also featured well over 34 short clips from other great short films that was featured during it as well. So bringing the grand total to well over 44, yep, that's right, 44 separate stories that was featured during this, including the main rap story around the whole thing, which is absolutely insane and has to be a record in some world. Another thing that I loved about this would have to be the music that was featured during it, including music from one featured story from someone by the name of Kaylee Rutledge, who featured a song called Fantasy, which was a very beautiful song that was featured during this said list of stories that was featured during this movie. And outside of the music that was featured, folks, another thing that I loved about this would have to be the different actors that was featured during it as well. Not only seeing none other than Matt Russman, who was featured during this, but was also featured during The Devil's in the Detail as Satan during that short, even Adam Jacob in Spooked in Bridgewater, and also the new zombie featured during the short of Dawn of the Living, The Last Zombie. Next up, you have April Dressel, who was not only featured during this film of Gravedigger Dave's Anthology Festival as young Dr. Drills a Lot, but was also featured during this as the Kid, even also featured as Hope in Infinite, and finally a daughter in the said How Sports Feel to People Who Don't Like It. Next up, you have Leanna Baumless, who was featured during this said film of Gravedigger Dave's Halfway House as herself. Also seeing none other than Ken Bueller, who was also featured as himself in this said film, and also location management. Not bad. Next up, we have none other than Ronald Diglett, who would be featured in this as himself in the film of Gravedigger Dave's Halfway House. Next up, we have Nathan Downs, who was also featured in Undo, as well as being featured in this film of Gravedigger Dave's Halfway House, but was featured as Cedric in Undo, and also featured as Cedric in the Halfway House as well. Must be a popular name. Then next up, you have none other than Wendy Hicks, who was not only featured in this film, but was also featured as Katie during this film as well, according to Carl and the Maestro. Not bad. And finally, last but not least, since we would be mentioning well over 50 names if we went through the whole list, folks, we see none other than Christine Hopkins, who was not only featured as Tabitha in Gravedigger Dave's Halfway House, but was also featured as self-modeling fashions in Men, Women, and Clothes, and finally Tabitha in Undo, which we may report on in the near future. Sounds like a cool movie. And speaking of movies, to get things back on track, folks, one of my favorite, nay, strike that, 4 of my favorite short films that was featured out of the 9 would have to be, first up, none other than The Coral Guardian with the underwater miner that was featured during it, which was absolutely awesome to see. And also none other than The Tale of the Ticket that was featured by Franz Erfer, which was in German, by the way, which was pretty cool to see. And also another one of my favorite stories would not only be The Cassette, but also none other than Wake Me Up by Corey Anderson that was featured during this film, which featured a woman who couldn't sleep thanks to a comet. Yeah, an actual film that was featured during this said film. And as a bit of a nod to all of the other directors, we would like to thank the people who were a part of this, none other than Ilya Polygrov for The Cassette, even none other than Narissa Kamali, a part of A Dark Side, even Christopher DeSendiro, hope we said that name right, who was featured during Carl, even Lindis Barrow it was featured in Home, and also seeing none other than Wei Ging featured in Terror from the Like. And finally, the director that was a part of one of our favorite shorts of The Coral Guardian, none other than David Dinser, who was featured during that as well. And by the way, before we forget, one of our favorite scenes during The Coral Guardian would have to be the fact of the beautiful song that we mentioned earlier that was featured during that said part, and would even show him actually playing the CD underwater, or more or less said record underwater with a phonograph, which was pretty cool. And to see him moving in slow motion to the music, not bad. Not bad at all. And seeing the fact that we don't know how to review movies along the lines of Siskel and Ebert or any of those other famous film reviewers that you know of out there, we say this. If you guys want to go ahead and watch a film that features Gravedigger Dave digging up stories from the afterlife or from the purgatory world of the halfway house to deliver into your house for a cool tale like no other, then I recommend you go out there and cop that disc or watch that flick. And according to Carl and the Maestro, currently free for you to watch on the said YouTube page of Hexagon Motion Pictures. So go check it out. And I guess with that said, folks, we might as well head back to that music once again. And when we return, we'll be back with more of the Indy Radio Arcade right after a word from our sponsors. So don't go anywhere just yet, folks, and stay tuned. Alright, all you indie 3D grappling wrestlers out there, welcome back to the Indy Radio Arcade. And now it's time for us to go into another edition of the Instant Classic Video Game Review, and the game we have up on the plate, and it's been a long time coming for this one, comes from none other than M. Dickey with their said game of Wrestling Empire. Yes! And the meat and potatoes of this said game features you as insert wrestling name here, trying to make your way from the indies all the way up to a major wrestling promotion without dying or more or less getting killed during your season, which according to Carl and the Maestro is the same thing. But at the same time, you gotta look at it like this, you know, it could be the same thing, but it's completely different. But I digress. Because what did we like about this game outside of the meat and potatoes? Well, unlike the Wrestling Empire games of old, in this one they have a free roam mode where you get a chance to go from not only the graveyard, the hospital, the gym, the cemetery, even none other than a plane and a subway as well. And Carl and the Maestro said we mentioned multiple places twice, but at the same time, I couldn't believe it when I was playing this game that we can go to different places in it. So yeah, they deserve to be mentioned twice. And did I forget to mention you get a chance to go to the bar after the show is over too? Yeah, that's the place you can go to as well. Another thing that we loved about this game would have to be the brand new moves he included in the game as well. From not only claymore kicks, crossroads, even a burning hammer, and a delayed version of a dominator that you can do, or if you're feeling a little bit frisky during the game, a chance for you to lead a Hurricane Rana directly into a cross power bomb if you have enough chemistry with your tag team partner, or enough skills to pay the bills during the game too. Another thing that I loved about this game would have to be the brand new weapons that were introduced in this game. Outside of not only light tubes and a whole bunch of other crazy things that was included in this game, including a barbed wire baseball bat, just to name one, and they brought back dynamite. Something that a lot of people requested from the M. Dickey series, finally back in the world of Wrestling Empire. Another thing that I loved about this game, speaking of the sheer insanity of it, would have to be the insanity that can happen at any moment during this game. From not only different wrestling promotions invading one company to get revenge on their territory being taken, to even people interfering at your matches or in your matches at a moment's notice, which is insane. I'm telling you, when you see it, it's insane. Another thing that we loved about this game from the booking side of the field, speaking of booking in different territories, would be the fact of the different ways you can book in the world of Wrestling Empire, and of course the different people you piss off depending on how you book the shows. Never a dull moment, I will say. Another thing that I loved about this game, unlike any of the other wrestling games of old, they finally decided to include a women's championship into the mix for this said game, which is a long time coming and something I really wanted to see. And along with the women's title, folks, they added more women into the game as well to have you fight for the championship with a litany list of people in it as well too. And with everything that I liked about this game, what didn't I like about this game? Well, for one, unfortunately you cannot free roam around and talk to your employees for the booking mode. Was one thing I didn't like about this game, outside of the fact that unfortunately they did not include a cage door for the cage matches, which in some cases can come back to haunt you because sometimes when you try to climb the cage and you can't really climb and you fall off, sometimes your wrestler might get injured. Well, depending on how old they are, because that does factor in for certain things, but according to Carl and the Maestro, an easy fix. An easy fix. And with everything that we liked and didn't like about this game, what do I think they could do to improve upon it? Well, giving you the freedom to roam around in the booking career mode to actually talk to your employees or, scope out new talent to try to help your show get to that next level. But also cage doors, plus the return of electrified ropes and a litany list of different other cool moves that I got a feeling would take M. Dickey another 6 months to add in. And according to Carl and the Maestro, as of this review, you already have moves from Street Fighter included in this game. So yeah, he's currently working on the game as we speak, so this is an ever-evolving monster that we may have to review again in the near future. And seeing the fact that we don't know how to review games along the lines of gold stars, coins, letters, or bricks, we review games in only 2 ways around here, folks. Will there be a video game story in the near future for this game? And do we recommend this wrestling game for you, the wrestling fan at home? Well, to answer your first question, folks, there's a high possibility of not only a video game story, but also a Tales from the Disc, and even a very special Cue the Horns Maestro! DJ Smokey's Great Moments in Wrestling History! Wait a second. What happened to the horns and why are you here? Good day, mate. It's been a while now, hasn't it? Yeah, Jackie Boy is back. And don't worry about that video game story. I've got it under control. And speaking of control, that's my monster that's in that story. So I'll be telling it. So don't worry your head. And the story? Next week. The part of Music Village, I show you the carnage of my monster. Well, I know what monster you're talking about, first of all. Second of all, no way in the world a story that violent is going to be a part of Music Village. I was going to save that for the Tales from the Disc. Shh. Don't you worry your frail head. It'll be peaceful. It'll have a happy ending, but a lot of broken bones along the way. So I'll see you next week. Make sure you bring the popcorn, because I'm definitely going to be bringing the heat. Okay, so that guy's back, and where is the security at to keep people like that around here not coming around here? What is wrong with you guys? Apparently, according to Carl and the Maestro, he snuck in without them realizing it. Of course you did. Of course you did. Man, see, these are the things I gotta worry about on a weekly basis for those wondering at home. But I digress with, I guess, Jack telling the video game story. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, there will be a video game story in the near future as soon as next week that I now know about, for the game of Wrestling Empire involving the 7'4", 425-pound Monster Doom going on a rampage for a world title match. Which, yeah, is insane. Absolutely insane. And do I recommend this game for you, the 3D indie wrestler at home? Well, if you want to play a game that has you using every move in your repertoire to make your way to the top of the ranks of your selective wrestling company, and even trying to win a championship in the indies of the wrestling school that I almost forgot to mention, which is another cool thing they added to this game to state your claim to fame, and also have a trophy case to show off all the gold you won if you become a Grand Slam champion to get the job done, then I recommend you go out there and cop that disc. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, it's on Steam and other places, as well as the Nintendo Switch, for you to play at home, and will constantly be updated by M. Dickey himself, a one-man editing team, which is absolutely awesome. I'm a big thumbs up in my book, if you ask me. And I guess with that said, folks, I think it's time for us to head back to that music once again. And when we return, we'll be back with another edition of the Indie Wall of Fame, right after a word from our sponsors. So don't run out of quarters just yet, folks, and stay tuned. All right, all you kings and queens of the leaderboards out there, welcome back to the Indy Radio Arcade. And three things, folks. Not only in the near future will we be reviewing more indie films from these indie creators, but also, according to Carl and the Maestro, we forgot to mention for the M. Dickey game that you can have pyrotechnics if you win a title, and of course, pyrotechnics for your entrances. Not bad. We might have to do a re-review for the booking career in the near future for that game, and the fact that we didn't mention all of the names from those movies, we might have to mention in the near future. And speaking of mentioning things in high bulk around here, folks, I think it's time for us to check out some cool indie games from the Steam machine and put them on high display along with some indie high scores along the way for a very special 11-game edition of the Indie Wall of Fame. And the first game that we have up comes from the developers Cybertail Games with their set game of Phantom Matrix. And this game automatically reminds me of Reboot, from a cat's perspective. And here's hoping in the near future, outside of getting a chance to throw objects at enemies to get them to get their hats knocked off and to get the attention off of you, you can also use a cat as a distraction as well. And no, Carl and the Maestro not to throw them, but more or less put a hat on the cat for the cat to dance in front of them while they pay attention to that cat. You run into the other room and try to get back what they took from you. And according to Carl and the Maestro, that would make for a great idea, but what if the cat gets distracted with the hat on its head? Even better, they won't see it coming. And the next game that we have up, besides cats in catastrophe-like moments, comes from the developers Stroyu Games with their set game of Miko Melee. And this game, for some strange reason, automatically reminds me of Dynasty Warriors. Yeah, definitely reminds me of the later versions of Dynasty Warriors. And here's hoping in the near future for this set game that not only you get a chance to improve your sword techniques, but also a chance for you to have other players join in on the fun. And apparently, according to Carl and the Maestro, it's a Dark Souls-esque game, and I got a feeling no one's gonna join you except to try to sabotage you. Well, here's hoping with that pentagram that you're fighting in the center in, you can summon a demon to help you out during the fights. Cause I got a feeling you're gonna need it, especially to take on that giant Markland beast with the axe combinations in his hands. Yeah, the Akimbo axes that he's got in his hands. You're gonna need help against that. But besides fighting Akimbo axe-wielding Markland beast, the next game that we have up comes from the developers Krakatoa Studios, hopefully we said that name right, with their set games of Fractals of Destiny. And this game automatically reminds me of, I would have to say Final Fantasy 15 for some strange reason. And here's hoping in the near future for this set game that not only you get magical powers outside of the dual-wielding sword abilities that you have in this game, but if you don't get the magical abilities, you have someone in your party to join you that does have magical abilities. Like a wizard or a mage or a witch or a warlock. Any of those combinational people to help you out in your journey would be nice. Especially seeing the fact that I know a couple of them knows healing abilities, so here's hoping they join you along on your quest. And the next game that we have up, besides trying to find a number to a wizard that we know, comes from the developers Jung Se-won with their set game of Escape from Lighthouse. And this game automatically reminds me of Portal. Yeah, definitely reminds me of Portal, and if you squint carefully enough, that does look like the gun from Portal as well, with the exception that it's a gun with a cube in the center and glass, but I digress, because here's hoping in the near future for this said game that not only you can use this said gun to not only prevent yourself from getting hit by lasers, or even a chance to gravitational pull some items your way to prevent yourself from getting hit by lasers, but you also can use this set gun to help you solve just about any puzzle that comes your way in it. And apparently, according to Carl and the Maestro, yes. Yes to what? Oh, the fact that you can use the gun to help you solve puzzles. All right, nice. But besides using some form of weird space gun to solve space puzzles, the next game that we have up, speaking of puzzles, comes from the developers XC Games with their set game of Mystery Box The Journey. And this game automatically reminds me of that movie The Box, with a little hint of Hypercube in there as well too. Or more or less the movie Cube 2 Hypercube. Because that cube looks like something that was featured during that film and is already starting to give me the creeps. But here's hoping in the near future for this said game that not only you get a chance to make your own mystery puzzle box, which always ends well according to Carl and the Maestro, but maybe, just maybe, a chance for you to actually upload your said puzzles online so others can try to solve it. Because, like always around here, you indie gamers will come up with a puzzle box so crazy, it would put the one that Hellraiser was put into to shame. Including the one with that creepy Jack-in-the-Box in it, so we're just gonna move on to the next game. Because the next one we have up, folks, comes from the developers Halva Studios with their said game of Heist Wars. And this game automatically reminds me of a combination of not only Smash TV and with a little hint of Payday in there and a splash of Unturned as well too. And here's hoping in the near future for this said game that not only you get a chance to play with or against your friends whilst trying to heist these said heistable places, if heistable is such a word, but also maybe, just maybe, a chance for you to boost your said gear to heist these said heistable places in the near future. Cause I got a feeling if you're going to a Fort Knox-esque like place, having a pistol is not really gonna help you out too much, especially with the screenshot we saw of this guy getting shot by at least 5 guards over by that vault door. Yeah, that's 5 guards. Yikes. Well, besides a bad day for a bank robber, the next game that we have up comes from the developers Infinite Level with their said game of The Future Project. And this game automatically reminds me of the real adventures of Johnny Quest. Yeah, it really does, because I got a feeling in one of these places you transport to, you might see Jeremiah Surge. So here's hoping in the near future for this game, no pun intended, that not only you get a chance to upgrade your said weaponry, but also a chance for you to have some form of vehicle to help you get from point A to point B. Cause yeah, if Jeremiah Surge is in this game, you're gonna need it. And also with that weird rock space penguin creature and rock creatures that may come after you, you're gonna need some mode of transportation to get away from them. So here's hoping for a bike or maybe a helicopter to get away from them. But besides cool 3D modes of transportations in a 3D game, the next game that we have up comes from the developers Q Games Ltd. with their said game of Pixel Junk Scrappers Deluxe. And this game automatically reminds me of, I would have to say Double Dragon in 2D form, with a little hint of Broforce in there as well. And here's hoping in the near future for this said game where you're scrapping things up and putting them in the back of trucks, that not only you get a chance to play alongside with your friends, and according to Carl and the Maestro you can, but also you get a chance to get your vehicles upgraded to carry more trash, garbage, and other bric-a-brac you happen to find on any of the construction jobs that you do. Cause I got a feeling you're gonna need it, especially for that giant oversized tower that I got a feeling you gotta break down before the end of the day. And apparently according to Carl and the Maestro, you have to actually pick up the trash from the tower. Still gonna need a big truck for that, so here's hoping you get one. And the next game that we have up besides Trash Collection comes from the developers New Gen with their said game of Zombie Within. And this game automatically reminds me of, Hello Neighbor with a little hint of Zombie Ate My Neighbors. And here's hoping in the near future for this said game that not only you get a chance to become a survivor, but also a zombie to try to take over one of these said hiding spots that people would use. And apparently according to Carl and the Maestro, not too entirely sure if you can do that, but at the same time a chance for you to inhabit certain places should be fun. Yeah, so here's hoping with a house with a big fence so the zombies won't get in. And Carl and the Maestro said you might have to fight a lot of zombies to get that, but I'll do it. I'll do it. As long as they have a double-barreled shotgun, I should be fine. But besides preferenceable weapons that would be used during these said adventures, the next game that we have up comes from the developers John Mangla with their said game of Grandpa's House. And this game automatically reminds me of the movie The Others. And yeah, also that other movie that featured those people going to their grandma's house only to realize that their parents were actually dead in the end. Spoiler alert ahead of time. And here's hoping in the near future for this said game that you get a chance to make your way out of this said house, especially away from your creepy grandpa and I think a grasshopper that might be coming after you as well. So yeah, here's hoping you can pull that off. But besides taking out creepy grandparents, folks, and creepy M. Night Shyamalan-like games, the last but not least game that we have up for this week comes from the creators Stately Snail with their said game of Access Denied Escape. And this game automatically reminds me of a combination of not only escape room, but a little hint of keep talking and nobody explodes. Now, here's hoping in the near future for this said game that not only you get help from your friends to try to unlock this said puzzle box, which seems to be a theme for this week, but also a chance for you to, I guess, create a puzzle your own for this as well? And according to Carl and the Maestro, not possible, but at the same time, a chance to solve it with some friends would be pretty cool to see. Yeah, see what I'm talking about? Well, you can't see it because the puzzle box is in pitch black darkness, but you can at least see the numbers, right? Apparently they can. Nice. And with that said, folks, we now make our way on over to the high scores for this week. And the first high score that we have up comes from the gamer known as Accelerion with their high score of 7, or should I say 174, for bowling a part of Tekken 7 Ultimate Tekken Bowl Heihachi Pin Score. Oh, nice. Next high score that we have up comes from none other than Rory Miller with their said high score of well over 13,852, a part of the video game of, and drumroll please, Disc Tetris, Nintendo version, a part of the NES Famicom disc. Next high score that we have up comes from none other than the gamer known as Steve Gamerhausen, hopefully you said that name right, with their high score of well over 12 strokes under par for the Tiger Woods PGA Tour Scenario Par 5 Challenge, number 3. Next high score that we have up after that comes from none other than Wig Woo 1, nice name by the way, with their high score of well over $59,137.38, a part of the Sega Dreamcast game of Crazy Taxi. Next high score that we have up after that comes from none other than Rickster 8 with their high score of 52,620, a part of the Intellivision game of Locomotion. Next high score we have up after that, folks, comes from none other than WWD Kong with their said high score of well over 210,370, a part of the video game of Spirit of 76, a part of the PC game of Microsoft Pinball Arcade. Next high score after that comes from none other than John M. Britzel with their high score of 45,740, a part of the Commodore 64 game of Pac-Man. Next high score after that comes from none other than Decidius with their high score of well over $805,796, a part of the PSP game of Burnout Legends Crash Medieval Mash. Hey, that rhymes. Next high score that we have up after that comes from none other than So Annoyed with their high score of 18. They strike that 16,900. A part of the game of Ice Cold Beer 15-minute high score variation for the novelty or the arcade, according to Carl and the Maestro. Next high score we have up after that comes from Craig Tubby with their high score of 2,089,400, a part of the main game of Donkey Kong 3. Next high score that we have up after that, folks, comes from none other than Julia Nokutsa with their high score of 15,683,160, a part of the Game Boy Color game of Kirby's Pinball Land. And the last but not least high score that we have to wrap up this Independence Month for this year comes from none other than Victory with their high score of 60,700, or strike that 60,079,290, a part of the Game Boy Advance game of Pokemon Pinball Ruby and Sapphire for the Sapphire stage under normal difficulty. Congratulations! And if you guys want to go ahead and check out any other cool high scores that are still coming through the Twitterverse as we speak, then you can head on over to the Twitter page of one man only known as @HighScore, or head on over to their website known as highscore.com to win cool prizes for your high scores, which is a fair trade. And while you're at it, make your way on over to the website of twingalaxies.com to put your high score on high display over there so you can live forever in your high scoring world, which is also a fair trade too, and plus we'll read it on the show. And the high score for this month still stands, folks, which comes from none other than, drumroll please, according to Carl of the Maestro, from none other than Crazy with their crazy high score of, and let me get my reading glasses out, 786,417,320, a part of the pinball video game of Terminator 2 Judgment Day. And if you guys want to go ahead and check out any other cool games that are still making their way through the Steam Machine via the cargo ship, cargo plane, or even subterranean train that is currently rumbling beneath your toes, then you can head on over to the store.steampower page, only known as store.steampower.com, and click ever so lightly on that upcoming button while clicking on that indie button as well to check out a whole bunch of cool indie powered games that might be able to power your house during a blackout. And thus far, according to Carl and the Maestro with the generator over in the corner, yep, we got at least 100% juice thanks to these awesome games. And I guess with that said, folks, I think it's time for us to head back to that music one more time. And when we return, we'll be back with another edition of the $64,000 question, right after a word from our sponsors. So don't skip on that bonus round just yet, folks, and stay tuned. All right, all you wrestling belt fighting champions out there, welcome back to the Indy Radio Arcade. And now it's time for us to go into another edition of the $64,000 question. But before we go into this week's $64,000 question, we go into last week's $64,000 question, which was worth well over $200,000 plus tax, according to Carl and the Maestro with the extra money added at the end of it. Would you with a group of your friends tried to capture the Pizzard inside of a giant oversized maze to put him back in his cage. And several of you out there would sound off pretty good on this one by saying the following. And somebody apparently looking at the picture and immediately telling us, "Are you insane?" Someone else saying, "Do we get a net gun?" And the last person with a net gun, a big net, a big silver giant oversized bag, and I assume a cage of his own saying, I got him, what do we do next?" Well, to answer that last guy, congratulations, you won the money, now run! And to the other two people, why, yes, you do get your own net gun. And to the person who said that first question of, are we insane? Not yet, I don't think so. And with that question out of the way, folks, we now go into this week's $64,000 question where we asked you for well over $64,000 and for the Indy Radio Arcade Championship of the World. Would you fight against Dan the Weatherman Stu inside of a steel cage ladder match? Oh, wait a minute. There's no way you're gonna have that belt on the line and not have my 7'4", 435-pound monster not be involved in it. As a matter of fact, that's his property that you took, and he's been pissed ever since. So you can only imagine what's gonna happen next, right? I'm gonna imagine you getting carried away by security, and what the world you think you're grabbing the mic for? Listen up, disco dancing stick boy. That belt belongs to us. If you got any disco balls, you would take us on for that belt in that cage. And I don't care how much money you put on the line. By the end of it, you're gonna be nothing but a bunch of broken bones, and you'll never disco dance again in this side of the world. All right. First of all, you came here unannounced. Second of all, you took over my $64,000 question to the point where Carl and the Maestro was over cowering in the corner from that 7-foot-tall monster, which I'm not afraid of, by the way. So, I tell you what. You know what, folks? Rewind the tape. Rewind the tape, Carl and the Maestro. I got a better idea for the challenge. So for well over $64,000 for you fans at home, would you surround the ring? That the match that Dan the Weatherman Stu is going to be involved with the 7-foot freak show, and be lumberjacks to make sure that nothing goes awry during that said match. And bonus money if you bring weapons of your own to that said match. Yeah, we're turning it into a weaponized match just for that championship so you can knock it off and not invade this show. Deal? A deal has been struck. I'll see you in 2 weeks, mate. And Disco Boy, get prepared to be broken in half. But before you answer that question at home, folks, you're gonna have to wait another 2 weeks there, you special enforcers, because Carl and the Maestro are currently rolling out the machines for this week, which means we've got to bring the Indy Radio Arcade for this week to an emphatic close. But don't worry, if you miss any of this 8-bit action we were able to bring you for this week, we got you covered. Because you can check this show out again one more time, all the time, on our Facebook, SoundCloud, Tumblr, and Instagram pages that are still named the same, only known as Music Village Radio under the hashtag Indy Radio Arcade Level 185. And as a matter of fact, we'll include another $185,000 for any of you out there who are brave enough to go into that cage to referee the match too. Yeah, I'm putting my foot down on this one. And if you guys want to go ahead and check out other crazy and zany things we still got prepared for this month of independence heading directly into the summer of RPG, like a cage match for a lifetime, then you can go ahead and check it out on our YouTube/Twitter page is still named the same, only known as Fiddle Agent 0012. Before we head out for the night, we would like to thank, as always, you the game show contestants out there for listening into a very special 8-bit month Independence Ending edition of the Indy Radio Arcade. We would also like to thank you, the independent artists out there, for doing that musical goodness like you always do. And keep up the great work, guys. And here's hoping your music gets featured as entrance music for the said challengers and champions that will be featured during that match. And why? Because we believe in you guys. That's why. And finally, last but certainly not least, we would like to thank you, the independent gamers out there, for coming out with all those sweet games that we had a chance to mention during this week's show, as well as high scores. And as always, keep them coming, because you never know what show might be lurking around the corner next. Hint, 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 hint. And I guess with the creepy janitor slapping on his referee shirt to be a part of that big cage match that will take place in less than 2 weeks, I'm DJ Smokey on behalf of Carl and the Mike Show, and for this month of independence for this show, saying, when there's smoke, there's fire. And we'll see you guys next time, and we thank you for playing another 8-bit Independence Month-ending edition of the Indy Radio Arcade. We're finished, man. We're done. Game over, man. Game over. And good night, everybody. Thank you.